The UN conference has pushed for a two-state solution calling for a Palestinian state. And leading the UN push were France and Saudi Arabia. In fact, the UN chief Antonio Guterres has called the two-state solution the only realistic, just and sustainable solution for peace in the Middle East.
We know the central question for Middle East peace is implementation of the two-state solution, where two independent, sovereign, democratic states, Israel and Palestine, live side by side in peace and security.
The 7-page-long New York Declaration sets out a phased plan. This to end not just the war in Gaza, but also the 8-decade conflict between Israel and Palestine. The plan would culminate with an independent, demilitarized Palestine, one that ensures that it coexists peacefully with Israel, eventually integrating the nation into the wider Mid-East region. And under the declaration, high-level representatives at the UN conference urged Israel to commit to a Palestinian state. According to the declaration, the UN conference's co-chairs, France and Saudi Arabia, the European Union, Arab League, and 15 countries that led the working groups have agreed to take collective action to end the war in Gaza. The timing of this two-day meet stands out. Why so? Because latest reports have already indicated that Gaza is plagued by starvation and famine. There's already growing global outrage at Palestinians' deprivation of food due to Israeli policies and practices, a claim that Israel has repeatedly denied. It should be noted that the conference was postponed from June and downgraded from world leaders to ministers. For the first time, though, the conference has established 8 high-level working groups. This to examine and make proposals on wide-ranging topics related to a two-state solution. The declaration has condemned Israeli attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure in Gaza and its siege and starvation, which have produced a devastating humanitarian catastrophe and protection crisis. It says that Israel's ongoing offensive against Hamas has killed over 60,000 Palestinians. The conference plan envisions the Palestinian Authority governing and controlling all Palestinian territory. It can do so with the Transitional Administrative Committee immediately established under its umbrella after a ceasefire in Gaza. It also supports deployment of a temporary international stabilization mission, one that will operate under UN auspices to protect Palestinian civilians, support the transfer of security to the Palestinian Authority, and even provide security guarantees for Palestine and Israel. Monitoring of the ceasefire and of a future peace agreement will also be a priority. Without naming Israel, but clearly referring to it, the document says illegal unilateral actions are posing an existential threat to the realization of the independent state of Palestine. Remember, this arrives at a time when reports have underscored Tel Aviv's plans to annex the West Bank. But what also stands out is that the New York Declaration has condemned the attacks committed by Hamas against civilians in southern Israel on October 7, 2023. Most importantly, it marks a first condemnation of Hamas by Arab nations. Remember, it was these attacks that killed about 1,200, mostly Israeli civilians, with 250 people taken as hostages by militants. Some 50 are still being held. But here's the question that arises now. Can a two-state solution be worked upon without cooperation from Israel and its ironclad ally, the United States? Because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has opposed a two-state solution. In fact, he has also rejected the meeting on both nationalistic and security grounds. The United States has also boycotted the meet, calling it unproductive and ill-timed. It should be noted that India has joined the 120 nations calling for the two-state solution. Remember, these talks follow after the French President Emmanuel Macron's announcement that France will formally recognize the state of Palestine during the United Nations General Assembly in September this year. And the latest to extend his support to the two-state solution is UK's Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer.
I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution.
But Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu was quick to lash out at his British counterpart, who Bibi has accused of appeasing terrorists. This after Keir Starmer said the UK would recognise Palestine unless Israel took urgent steps to end the war in Gaza.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.